Well, students, this course you are going to attend is entitled Systems Analysis and Design. It is also variously known as Information Systems Design, also known as Management Information Systems, Data Processing, Business Data Processing. There are many names for it, but generally they are all concerned about how to design systems for use by organizations. What I mean by use by organizations, there are, for instance, railways. Railways uses information systems very effectively. Like when you want to buy a ticket, you book your ticket by going to a reservation office and giving your requirements in terms of a sheet of paper, and then they do a computerized booking. And once they do a computerized booking, before the train starts, they are able to produce a list of people who have reserved seats in that particular compartment and seats which are still vacant and so on. So, this information is used by both the railways and by the passengers. Apart from reservation, of course, there are a number of other things they use this information for. Similarly, there are many other organizations, for instance, banks. When you go to a bank, you nowadays always go to a teller who has a computer, and whatever you want to withdraw or deposit and so on is entered directly on the computer, and it goes into their database. Insurance companies, RTO office, and government, income tax returns, everything nowadays is computerized. There is no part of our day-to-day existence in this country which is not touched by computers. Even when you want to go by bus reservations are done nowadays using a computer. So, 90% of the use of computers in organizations is in the area of systems design for use by you and me. And if you take, for instance, the companies in India like Infosys or Wipro or TCS or many other companies, all of them really are in the area of developing information systems for various organizations. The organizations may be banks, maybe insurance companies, maybe a motor car company. They also develop systems primarily not only for Indian organizations, but also for organizations outside the country. For instance, one of the major areas of work they do is in processing information which they have about the credit card companies. So, there are credit card processing and so on, they are all done by many of our large IT companies. So, IT companies in general are mostly doing this, and that means that the employment opportunity for all of you is in the general area of systems analysis and design. Of course, you do not start out as a systems analyst or a system designer, you normally start out by programming or by testing programs, but gradually when you understand the kind of work they do, you graduate to become a systems analyst or a system designer. So, this course is generally about how organizations function and what appropriate information systems you got to make to satisfy the requirements of the organization, and in what way it will help the organization to improve their profits, to improve their efficiency, and generally to improve their day-to-day functioning. That is the primary objective of this course. This course, of course, is got a number of prerequisites. I am assuming when I teach this course to you that you already have had a course in programming. Normally these programming courses are nowadays either in C or in Java, and in some places you also teach some other languages such as COBOL and so on. But by and large, it is expected that when you come to this course, you know programming. This course, of course, is not the only course. There are a number of other courses which will follow this course. Particularly, for instance, there will be courses on software engineering. Almost every college has got a compulsory course on software engineering, and software engineering is also somewhat overlaps with this course on systems analysis and design. You might consider this as a base course on which systems engineering, this software engineering course is built. Software engineering course is also more concerned about projects, about how to monitor projects, how to determine the cost of projects and of that type. We will not be concerned too much about project management and areas of that type. But as a part of systems analysis and design, you also will be concerned with subjects like designing databases, some aspects of object oriented systems design, because most systems, as you know today, are use so called objects. We will give you an introduction of what these objects are. Of course, as you know, later on there will be a full fledged course on object oriented programming, and in some places also something on object oriented design. Now, apart from that, you also this course also is going to talk about some aspects of electronic commerce. Electronic commerce is maybe also an elective course, but in as much as lots of organizations today are using the online computers for the operations, the areas of e-commerce becomes an important part of system design today. So, we will also be concerned about e-commerce as part of this course. So, you can see that the course is fairly broad based, and it is also a course which is a foundation course for many future courses to come. So, to that extent, this is something which you have to pay special attention to and understand various topics at a level which is the basic level, that is, it lays the foundations on which you can build the other superstructures which come up in the other courses. So, this course, of course, I am going to divide up into a number of different modules, and as you know, some of these modules will be in the web also. In the web material which supports this course, there are transparencies, there are also multiple choice questions, there are worked out examples, and there is a question bank, and there is a lot of support material for you to learn this course. And so, listening to the lecture only gives you some kind of a background and motivation on what you are supposed to do. You actually have to solve problems, you have to design small systems of your own to be able to understand this course in a much deeper sense. So, I would urge you to go to the computer, look at the web support material and go through that support material also concurrently with whatever you hear in this lecture. The lecture will only clarify some of the points which probably are not very clear from the transparencies which are there as part of that web presentation. So, there is no need for you to take down whatever is shown on the transparencies in this classroom, because all these are available in the web material, which is an accompanying support material which you can always use. Okay. So, let us get an overview of what are all the various topics I am going to talk about. I think we will start off talking about the need for information in management, the distinction between data and information, and the requirement of information by various levels in the management. In any organization, there are levels of people. There is a chief executive, there is a general manager, there is something like a branch manager or a lower level manager, and there are also the people who do the day to day work like the executive assistants or clerical staff and so on. Each of them has a certain role to play in the organization, and each of them requires some kind of an information. So, we will essentially say what type of information is appropriate for people in these different levels in the organization. Apart from that, organizations are not monolithic. They are divided up into a number of parts. Like there will be everywhere you will find a finance section, you will find a section which deals with human resource development. There will be people who will be concerned about supplies and supply chains, how to get supplies into the organization. There will be marketing people who will find out how to sell whatever they produce, and there will be some research and development. So, there are a number of different parts of an organization, and organization as I said is not a monolith, because all these different parts in the organization, they require specialized information for their own use. So, we have to understand what are these different types of what I would say sub parts of an organization, and what these sub parts or what these individual groups require, and the nature of the information we have to present to them. Unless you present the information which is appropriate to them, they will find it not very useful. So, you got to always present something which is necessary and sufficient for that particular management person to function effectively. So, it is very important to understand from the point of view of the organization what each section requires. So, we will spend a fair amount of time in talking about the functional levels of the organization, and for each function what are the requirements of information. And then the very important part of the complete systems analysis and design is something called a systems analysis and design life cycle. What we mean by life cycle is the steps you go through in coming up with the entire system. You go through a number of steps. As you know, in any large problem you have to divide up the problem into a number of steps, and you have got to follow each step, and with each step you kind of conclude some part of the requirement for the design. So, effectively each step more or less has got to be self-contained, and the future steps depend upon the past steps in some sense. So, you really have to talk about the various subparts of an entire system, and this is called the life cycle. In other words, you go through different parts and you complete the cycle, and of course no organization is static. So, whatever you do will not remain permanent forever, it will change from time to time. So, organizations are not static, human systems are not static. So, there is a requirement of also what they call maintenance. More than maintenance really means not only correction of errors you made in the earlier system, but also enhancements depending upon what the management perceives as the new needs which the organization has had. So, there are these aspects of a life cycle which kind of makes you go through a feedback loop, and goes through a loop in some sense you have to kind of refine your system as you go along. And in any organization, one of the most important parts of designing any system is to understand what the requirements are of the person who is going to use it. So, to determine the requirements of the organization is the most crucial parts, and many of the systems have failed because people have not understood the requirements, and understanding the requirements and clarifying whether you understood correctly the requirements with the person who gave you the requirement is an important part of the entire life cycle of systems analysis and design. So, requirement specification is still something of a, you might say, an art, in the sense that it requires you to talk to a number of people, affect whatever they told you, not misunderstand, and gather as much of the facts as you can from the person and sift out what is facts and what is not facts, and what is assumed, what is not assumed. There is a whole lot of nuances when it comes to in requirements gathering. And of course, people have been looking at various tools for requirements gathering, but many of these tools have not really worked very effectively. Even today, requirements determination is a very human intensive activity, which very often is done by experienced people who are not afraid to ask questions and get the answers from the people whenever they have in doubt. And following this getting requirements, you have to find out whether it is at all feasible to meet these requirements with a computer based system. To what extent does the current technology allow you to do it? To what extent, what will be the cost, and what will be the cost benefit? Will it, in other words, all managements are really interested in finding out, if I spend so much money on my computerization, is it going to give me the return on that? Am I going to make a profit based on this system you have implemented? Because designing and implementing computer based information systems is fairly expensive. Many companies spend hundreds of thousands of rupees in building systems. Very often at the end of it, they are not always satisfied, and so there is a requirement to be able to find out what benefit you will get, and very clearly tell the user what benefits he will get and what to expect and how much approximately it is going to cost him. So then the management has to decide on a cost benefit basis whether it is worth going ahead with computer based information system or do it the old way the person has been doing always. Okay. But of course, nowadays what is happening is that with the reduction in cost of computers, which are plunged, as you know, the computer itself is not a very expensive machine, but the people who have to design the systems are quite expensive. So the overall time which takes and the overall cost is the people's cost, not the computer cost. So one has to be concerned about the time as well as the cost and the benefit. So all these things are to be treated in a topic in fair detail about feasibility analysis. So because one has to be able to quantify cost, one has to quantify benefit, and not always it is possible to quantify a benefit. If you say your organization will work better, what do you mean by better? And sometimes, as I said, it is not able to quantify benefits. Simple example is in railway reservation. The reservation for you, the only benefit you can see is that it is not probably reducing the cost of your ticket, but the benefit is that it is, you are assured of your ticket, you can book it way ahead of time, and it gives you a much better comfort. You have to stand in a queue for a shorter period than you were before when the manual system was operational. And similarly, when a bank before the computerization, you had to spend a lot of time standing in queues. Now with computers, the amount of time you spend standing in queues is reduced. So you feel there is a benefit, but it is not quantifiable in the sense that you don't quantify what is the money value of the time I have saved by standing in a queue. Okay. But still you know that it has benefited you. Everybody will agree with you that computer based reservation of trains have really made a big difference to our traveling in this country. So there is a benefit which sometimes is what I would call subjective, and it is not always objective. So one has to also weigh the what I will say intangible benefits and also tangible benefits. Tangible is something which you can measure as rupees, whereas intangible is something which is better comfort for you, or better methods of managing a system, and so on. And apart from then we have to really look at some of the tools which are used in systems design. one of the most important tools is called data flow diagrams. How does data enter an organization? How does it flow from one part of the organization to the other part of the organization? And each part of the organization, what is done, and all these things become important, and that is all put in a graphical form for people to understand. Because as I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So a pictorial form of representing how data moves in an organization is what is the topic to be covered in data flow diagrams. And once you understand data flows, you have to be concerned about how to process this data to get information. So process specifications, how to specify processes, and that will be one major topic. And there are number of methods of specifying processes. The traditional method is to use an algorithmic technique. The algorithmic technique, not in the sense of writing a program, but in the sense of writing in plain English, but in a step by step manner, using structures which are somewhat similar to programming, like for instance repeat something or do while something, those kind of structures, or decisions. If something is true, do something else. So these are all the ones which are effective in one of the methods of process specification is to use what they call structured English. The other is particularly for complex decision making, where the number of conditions to be tested, there is something called decision tables. So I will spend some amount of time describing what decision tables are and how they are useful. One of the important parts of aspects of decision tables is that you can determine using this tool whether the specifications have been correctly made. In other words, there incorrect specifications or incomplete specifications, which very often happens. You can detect it at the stage of design, and something which is detected at the stage of design is much easier to fix than after it goes to the field. After something goes to the field and people find an error in that, it costs a lot more, and it also creates a lot of bad feelings about the system. So it is better to it is very important to remove as many what they call bugs or mistakes or so on at the design stage, and to that extent decision tables are extremely useful in removing these bugs. Then of course you have to talk about how to input data. What are the methods of inputting data? There are, as you know, as time passes, new methods of inputting data are always coming. One of the things which people use very effectively nowadays is a barcoding, where when you go to a supermarket, they swipe the barcode and get all the data about that product in that barcode, and that barcode is nowadays being replaced by something called an RFID tag, that is radio frequency identification tag, which is a semiconductor with a little wireless, where the entire data about an item is embedded, and that tag is embedded into an item. In fact, some of the clothing stores where say the clothing is extremely expensive, they embed this tag in the belt or something. So when you take it to the counter, automatically the counter has a reading device to find out what the properties of this particular item which the customer has bought, and so immediately it can create a bill. So there are a number of uses of this new kind of data acquisition. So we have to be concerned about various methods of data acquisition, and for instance RFID tags was not there 5 years ago, but today it is becoming very important, and tomorrow something else may come. So we have to continuously learn as you go along newer methods of how to acquire data and how to use data. Okay. So using is essentially processing, and acquiring is as important. And acquiring also you have to find out the appropriate method of acquiring different types of data. Having acquired the data, you got to organize the data in a proper way for processing. and that is what is the concern of so-called database management. There is a database management course which is normally there in all computer science curricula, which goes into great detail about database design. But in this course, we will give you why database and give you a basic idea of how to organize data in a database. You also will be concerned about the appropriate way of organizing, okay, without losing data, without duplicating data and so on. So that is the topic to be covered in database management module of this course. And once you process the information and so on, you got to present the information to the management. That is the result of whatever data processing is done is the information which will be used by the managers. So the presentation becomes quite important. Very often the presentation is by reports, but the reports by themselves may not convey too much information. So sometimes they, depending upon the situation, you would use, for instance, a bar chart or a pie chart. Like for instance, when a budget is presented, the finance minister shows a big circle where there are a number of pies, saying that out of the revenue of 100 rupees I collect, 40 rupees is going towards defense, 10 rupees is going towards education, 10 rupees is going towards health, and so on. So you can, at a glance from that pie chart, you can find out how the money being collected is going. In other words, how your tax money is being used up by the government to probably give you better service. And in fact, one of the things you will find in the current budget is that a big part of that pie is spent by the government in servicing debt, because they have taken debt from people over the years and they are giving interest. So interest payment itself is a fair amount of what you earn, okay, and these are becomes very obvious with some methods of presentation of data. So data presentation methods are also as important as data processing methods, because the presentation is the one which triggers action on the part of a manager, and better the presentation, the better will be the way in which he will understand what this what the implication of these results which the computer has produced. And there is always a concern in a computer based systems about whether the results are can be relied on. Very often the general public, there is a feeling that the computer makes lots of errors, which is not true. In fact, I heard one lady say that my girl did extremely well in the examination, but I think she got a second class because the computer made a mistake, okay, which of course is not true. I mean, they kind of put a blame on a computer, not the blame where it belongs. But then from the point of view of the designer, he has to make sure that he does not subject himself to the blame, and he can more or less be able to guarantee that whatever results come out of the computer are correct, that there is no errors in processing. So there is something called in some organizations, they also have a separate audit. In other words, whatever information system is designed, there is an auditor which looks at it independently and says whether this system does what it is supposed to do when it is designed. In other words, there is requirements and system is designed to meet the requirements, and whether it does really meet the requirement is what the auditor is supposed to look at. So there is a in order to avoid errors or minimize errors, there is a whole lot of controls which one puts into the information system in terms of controls on data input, controls on processing steps, controls on the outputs, and all these controls and how these controls are to be designed is an important aspect of designing any large computer system. These controls are not very obvious to you when you write small programs, but when you deal with billions of lines of code. Also, when you deal with large populations or like large clientele, it becomes important, because this question of pure volume. When there is a huge volume, there is always a possibility of error. Like a simple example is, even if you take an examination processing, if there are in the CET, for instance, there are probably more than about lakh of students who take the CET exam, and so there is all the results are got to be tabulated, and they normally are entered very often manually, and there could be manual errors. When you enter so much, there is always a manual error. To some extent, the lady's complaint that her daughter did not do well may be correct, because by chance the data for her may have been incorrectly put in. So, there is a need to make sure that when data is put in, it is correctly put in. In other words, there is a control on detecting errors at the right stage and correcting them at that stage, rather than waiting till the end. Okay. So, these are parts of the control systems which one has to have in place, particularly for very large systems which deal with a huge number of data and so on. Okay. And as I said, control is important, audit is important, as also security is important. What I mean by security is, many organizations, very important data regarding their functioning is stored in databases on a computer. Nowadays, you know that no computer is isolated. Every computer is connected to every other computer, and there is some kind of, there is an internet to which everybody is connected. And when you have an internet, there are hackers, and there are people who try to kind of get into your system and spy on your system and try to find out what data you have stored in the system. So, you have to prevent. You have to have some method of ensuring security of data which you have stored, so that they don't leak out, and also that they are not garbled or intentionally changed by somebody from outside. Sometimes even disgruntled employees change data, and you must make sure that data is available only to employees on a need base, not very widely available. And there has also got to be an audit trail. In other words, if somebody got into the data and changed some data, one has to know who changed it and when he changed it, so that he can always track down if there any mischief took place. So, the audit trails, control, security, these are extremely important aspects of designing any large information system, and that is one important topic we will be talking about in this course. The last part of this course deals with electronic commerce. The reason which, see, many of the traditional systems analysis and design courses, electronic commerce is not really taught in any great length, but I felt that with the gaining importance of e-business, so called e-business, and designing information systems, we have to be concerned about also designing systems for use in e-commerce, where new types of problems arise. So, the e-commerce deals also with issues of security of its own type, because all documents are exchanged electronically. They need to make sure that it is not corrupted on the way, and it is authenticated, and there are many issues which come in the wake of the fact that in e-commerce you are using the internet, which is a public network which can be entered by anybody. So, electronic commerce has a number of issues, not only that of designing system, but designing system for security, designing system so that payments are realized appropriately, and also that the secrecy of transactions are maintained, secrecy of individuals and what they bought is maintained, secrecy of their credit cards are maintained. These aspects become important when you come to e-commerce. So, e-commerce systems also are important part of an overall information systems today, and so that is the reason why this subject is one of the modules in this course. Many colleges now of course have a separate e-commerce course which is an elective which will follow this course, but this module will give you the background on understanding the higher level e-commerce course. All this is primarily the what I would call within quotes the theoretical aspects of this course. There is also some part which is practical. The practical has got to be, of course, can't be done in a lecture. The practical has to be done by you. So you got to design a system yourself to be able to understand the various bits and pieces of what you have learned in this course. So you have to integrate all this together in designing a real system, and a real system of course could be very large. So by in a class like this or in a course like this, we can only talk about smaller systems. And so I have given a number of examples of smaller systems at the end of the course, which is in the web course. So in the lecture I cannot really talk too much about it, but I will give you the steps which are required to design a system, but you have to go back and look at the web material to be able to understand how to design a full system. So that will conclude the course. So far we have seen why we should learn this course. Now we will start on the main subject matter of this course. This course is, as I told you, divided into many parts, many modules, and now we are going to start with the first module. And first module is titled Information and Management. The major reasons why we want to discuss this topic is that, as I said, most organizations require information systems to effectively manage their organizations. Also, a large number of IT companies in India are in the job of actually designing information systems for various types of organizations. So when you go to work for these organizations, you will find that the organizations are really, their major business is really to design such information systems. Of course, you may not be put in charge of designing one such system at the very beginning, but you must have a clear understanding of what an overall system looks like and how to design such a system. So the various topics which are going to be discussed are data, and in what way is data different from information. And once you get information, various types of information, there are actually four types of information which organizations use. One of them is called operational, the other is called tactical, the third is called strategic, and the fourth is called statutory. We have to define each of them, and we also have to say why each of them is required. Then we have to effectively talk about why do companies require this management information systems, and the requirements of information at various levels of the management of the company. Let us continue, and the rest of the module you have to talk about the allocation of management requirements and what type of information we have to give to each type of management, and on a need basis. And once we allocate and give the appropriate information, because the major idea here is that we have to be able to give what is appropriate for a particular level of management. There is no point in giving certain types of information to the top management which has much lower amount of time available to it, because their jobs are of a different nature. Depending upon the nature of the job of different persons in the organization, you have to really give what is appropriate for them, and that is essentially what we will be discussing in this part. And when you give information to various levels of people, then we have to also be concerned about whether what we are giving is correct and it is complete. So, there are more than this, there are a number of other qualities of information which you make sure is actually given, as I said, on a need to have or need to know basis. And when you design information systems, there are many types of information systems, and we have to also understand what are these different types of information systems. What I mean by that is there are certain systems like railway reservation and so on, which are online reservation systems. That is, when the customer is waiting for the reservation to be done, the system goes ahead and does the reservation. There are others which are not online, that is, which are so called batch systems. For example, if you are processing information, the results of the examination of say CET candidates, which is runs into lakhs of candidates, the entire system runs as a batch, and the results come out as a printed output. So, this is a different type of a information system compared to a system for a real time reservation. As I said, the major motivation is that most of the jobs are really in this area, and you should know and what these the types of information required and who requires them. And you also should know the nature of the organization and the structure to design appropriate information system, because different organizations have different structures. A hospital, for instance, has a certain structure. When you go to a hotel, the hotel is a different structure, and if you go to a manufacturing company, the way they operate is quite different from the way a hospital operates. So, each of them has a different structure and different method of managing their affairs. So, as a systems analyst, you are a person who knows how to program, how to design systems and so on. Of course, you are not a specialist in hospital management, and you are not a specialist in running a manufacturing company and so on, but in your lifetime you will be called upon to design systems for different varieties. Someday you will be asked to design a system for a bank, maybe a few months from then you will be asked to design a system for an insurance company. Later on in your career, you may be asked to go and look at a hospital and design a hospital information system. So, you get a variety of jobs depending upon the variety of organizations from which the contracts are given to the company where you work. So, from the point of view of the company, you have to really understand what these different type of organizations do, and based on what they do, you really have to tailor the information system you design which are appropriate for them. And this is a great challenge, because you, as I said, you are a generalist, you are not a specialist. You don't understand, you don't know to begin with all about a hospital, but hopefully by the time you finish writing an information system, you will know a lot about how organizations like a hospital function and what each person does and so on, because the major job is to create or design system which is appropriate to all the people who are working in the hospital. In this module, we are going to talk about the distinction between data and information. That is the first major topic. Then we will talk about the types of information. I said there are 4 types, and we will talk about the division of management into different hierarchical structures and a type of information needed for each level of management, and the functional areas of organizations. And as I said, functional areas will differ from organization to organization to organization, attributes of information, and all these things are essentially the topics to be covered. So, we will start with the first topic, namely what is data and what is information. In general parlance, in day-to-day affairs, we normally use them interchangeably. In fact, even in many books on computer science, they use more or less data and information synonymously. This somehow has this distinction between data and information is somewhere along the line lost. If you look at the early beginnings of computers, there the literature would have made a very clear distinction between data and information, and that distinction has to be kept in mind while designing systems. Now, data is something which is the raw material which you access and which goes into a computer based system. The information is a processed data which is used for triggering actions of people who actually manage a company or run a company in different ways. So, the point I want to make is that data is something which is used by machines. Raw data is of no use to human beings, whereas information is processed data. After it gets processed by machine, and processing can be in different ways, and you process the information, the data which comes in depending upon the requirements of different levels of people and different people in the organization. So, from that point of view, processed data is really what I will call information, and one has to understand clearly this distinction. Now, if you look at data in general, as I said, data is the raw material with which you begin, and it costs a lot of money to collect data. It is not easy. Let me explain what I mean by it costs a lot of money to collect data. Suppose you are trying to find out the preference for a particular kind of soft drink. Okay, you are starting a soft drink company or some other soft drink company is there, they want to find out how well their competition is doing, and you want to find out the preferences. Then you have to go to a large number of people in different parts of the country. You have to go not only to cities, but you got to go to the villages, and you go to different parts of the city and villages. And India is a very vast country. There is no point in just doing a survey in one part of India and thinking it will kind of also apply to other parts of India. So, you have to really look at almost all states, maybe samples from all states, and send people out to ask questions, collect this data and so on. So, the amount of time and effort spent in collecting all this data is considerable. So, you really have to be careful about what data you collect and whether the data you collect is you can rely on it, whether what are you going to do with this data. Very often people just go ahead and collect data without asking the question, what am I going to do with this data. So, you have to really work backwards, that is, you have to first ask the question, what is this data going to be used for. In other words, what information do I want to generate out of the data I am going to collect, and based on that only go and collect necessary and sufficient data. That is, in other words, you should not leave out the important data. At the same time, you should not go and collect all kinds of useless unnecessary data, because it is only going to cost you money. Not only to collect, later on when you try to enter it on in a computer, you have to give to data entry operators, and they also cost money and so on. So, you have to be very careful about collecting only necessary and sufficient data. Now, the distinction between data and information is also something which occurs in day-to-day affairs. Let me take a very homely example. If you look at a housewife, she would be buying milk every day for the family, and normally families don't buy exactly the same amount of milk day after day after day. Some days they may require more milk, some other days they may require less milk, some days they may go out on leave and may not require milk at all. So, what you do, what she does is to effectively write down on a notebook maybe the daily how much she bought. So, this is essentially nothing but raw data. So, she collects all this, she notes down all this data just to make sure. The purpose of this collection is to effectively give the money to the milkman at the end of the month for all the milk she has bought. So, at the end of the month she processes data. This processing this data is actually one step is to add all this amounts of milk she bought. So, addition is one processing step, and having added all this, she multiplies this sum by the cost per liter of milk, and she gets the total money to be paid. Okay. So, this is the result. The result or the information which she uses is the amount of money to be paid, and this money is what she pays to the milkman at the end of the month. So, you can understand that the what is entered in the diary is no use unless she uses it to find out how much money she has to pay. Now, one need not stop at this stage, and if suppose there is you are a more careful housewife and want to kind of balance your budget and so on for the household, and you may be having say a certain number of rupees given as your monthly budget for expenses on milk, on clothing, on provisions and so on. And so, what you might like to find out is that out of the total amount of money which you have to spend in a given month, what proportion of that money is spent on milk. So, you can divide the amount of money, you can divide the amount of money you spent on milk by the total amount of money you have available to find out the fraction of the money you are spending on milk. Okay. Now, here is a very interesting kind of a thing comes, because the input here is already the money you have spent. That is, in one sense it is an information which you use to give the milkman. Now, it is being used as data to find out the percentage of your budget which milk is taking up. So, the information itself becomes the input to another processing step. So, that is the reason why this subtle difference between data and information is not very clear. What may be data at some time would become information, and what is thought of as information at some time really becomes data for another step. Okay. So, that is, I guess, the reason why people are not able to make such very clear distinction between these two. In any case, from our point of view, we have to be very clear that what data is collected and being input to the computer is really the raw data, and what the result of processing this data which is used to trigger actions to take certain like in the case of the housewife, the action which she takes is to give money to the milkman. Okay. So, effectively the question is one of what action it triggers. Once it triggers an action, that is essentially an information which triggers actions. As I said, to repeat, data is used by machines, and data is useless unless it is processed to create information. Information is processed data, and information is used to run organizations efficiently. Efficient running of organizations depends upon the quality of information which they get. If it is a poor quality, the running of the organization also will not be poor, it will be in a very poor state. Even in the case of a housewife, if she makes an error in addition and multiplication and gives a wrong amount to the milkman, there can be either quarrel if she gives lower amount to the milkman, or she won't even know she has given more money if she has given higher amount and the milkman does not tell her anything. So, the point is that one has to be careful in the way you process the data. your processing steps must be correct. If there is any error in the processing step, it will reflect itself in a incorrect output, which will in turn trigger incorrect action. In fact, one of the very common terminology used in data processing is what they call GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. That is another way of looking at it. In other words, the data, see the garbage need not only be data, but the garbage can also be the incorrect programs you write. So, if you have incorrect programs you write, then also you will get what you get out is only garbage. Okay. So, the important thing is that you have to make sure the data is correct, at the same time also the processing steps are correct. As I said, information is used by managers to trigger actions. Now, let us take a more serious example. I took an example of a housewife, which is a very I would call it a trivial example. I will take an example of a shopkeeper. When I mean a shopkeeper, of course, there are shops and shops and shops. Okay, there are shops which are run by a single person. There are shops which are essentially huge supermarkets, and there are different types of shops. Okay, there are medical shops, there are provision stores, and cloth shops, and so on. But by and large, all the shops have some common functions. And let us take for as an example a provision store. A provision store or even a medical store. I think maybe medical store is slightly better example for me. So, let me take a medical store. A medical store, all of you know, sells medicines. Okay. So, when what is a storekeeper? Many of the medical stores, in fact, are run by one or two people. There is a single room where he gives all the medicines, and then effectively you go there and he gives you the medicine, and if you give the prescription, he gives the medicine, and he makes up a bill if you insist on a bill, and collects the money from you. Okay. From the point of view of the medical store owner, what he requires is that at the end of the day he must know how much money he has collected. Okay. So, he must know some idea of how much sales he has made per day. Okay. So, that he has an understanding about his monthly income and how much he can spend and things like that. And more important is that if a particular medicine goes out of stock, is low in stock, then he should reorder that medicine and keep medicines in the shop for people to come and buy, because if he has no stock when somebody comes and asks for that medicine, then he is losing an opportunity of selling that item. They will go to a neighboring medical shop and then buy it from the neighboring medical shop. So, he has lost an opportunity of being able to sell. So, it is very important for the shopkeeper to make sure that there is enough medicine stock in the store, and he has to keep track of whenever something is going a little below a level where he has to order. Now, normally most medical shops I have seen, what they do is they have a little notebook, and when he goes and looks at the shelf and picks up last bottle of medicine, or only 2 bottles are left or something, he immediately comes and notes down in the book saying that this is going below stock, and so he notes it down, and next time medical representative comes, he orders that medical representative the item. So, that is a kind of manual system. If suppose it is a computerized system, then the computer should be able to essentially have an inventory of all the medicines he has distributor to order this medicine. So, this is possible in a computer based system. To some extent it can be automated, or if suppose you want to have a human intervention, that he feels that his profit is not very high out of this medicine, maybe at the end of the day you can give him a list of items which are going below the so called reorder level at which he has to reorder. So, he may decide that he would like to reorder certain things, he may not like to reorder certain things. So, in other words, there is also a danger in automating the entire thing, because in which case doing human intervention and things go on without even his knowledge, that email orders it and then things get delivered and so on. So, one has to be also concerned about to what extent you should automate. Okay. So, he also should be concerned about how much is there an overstocked item. In medical shop particularly, it's a worry, because the medicines have a certain fixed life. If he has something which is overstocked and is not selling, then it may expire. The expiry date may be there, and so he may be a dead stock which has to, on which he has lost money. So, he has to make sure that there is not overstocking of items. He has to understand what payments, if he gives credit, what payments are long overdue. He must have an idea of the profit and loss account, that is how much he has paid, how much he has got. So, he must have clarity about the profit and loss account. And primarily all these are required to streamline the day to day operations of his medical shop. This what this, and the amounts, you can say the amount of data which he has to collect and the amount of information he gets is fairly detailed at the level of inventory, at the level of profit and loss and so on. So, this is what is called operational information. For operating his medical shop from day to day, he requires all this operational information to what I would say efficiently run a shop. Okay. And that is the first basic necessary information he requires to be able to run this shop. Once he gets his operational information, that can be used further. It can be massaged to get other types of information which have a better might say payoff in the long run, and that better payoff will come from what is known as tactical and strategic information, which we will discuss in the next lecture. So, so this to conclude, in this lecture actually we learnt about why this why we should learn about organizations and information requirements of organizations, what is data and what is information, what is the distinction between these two, and what is operational information, and how do we make sure, how do we actually, with examples I looked at how to convert data into information and what is really meant by operational information.